stocks are on track for another record high at the open as AI euphoria fuels recent gains. Solid results from Taiwan Semiconductors last week set the tone for chip makers. The iShares Semiconductor ETF coming off an 8% gain. And this week, we'll hear from Netflix, Tesla, and Intel, all set to release their quarterly results. Is there one report that could make or break the market's momentum? Well, joining us now is Bob O'Donnell, TECHnalysis Research LLC President and Chief Analyst. Bob, it's great to have you here. So put this all in perspective for us. We certainly have a lot of optimism heading into this week. Is there one earnings report that you see on deck for tech that could really make or break the recent gains that we've seen?
Well, hey, Shauna, thanks for having me. I don't know that there's a single one, because the beauty of the momentum that we're seeing around AI is the fact that it is relatively spread out. Obviously, Nvidia is the one case that everybody tends to point to, but I mean, look what we saw with Microsoft overtaking Apple, right? We've seen a lot of growth from other players, AMD as well as another big chip supplier, as you said, TSMC, ASML, they're one of the chip equipment manufacturing makers. Other companies who've been involved with generative AI related software. We've got Google, we've got Meta, there's Adobe. All of these types of companies, I think, are poised to benefit, because why I think the momentum is happening is that a lot of people are starting to expect and see that 2024 is the year when it actually starts to hit the mainstream, when average people in their jobs and in their various environments are going to start to see some of the productivity benefits from AI. And then the hope, of course, is that translates in turn to reduce costs. Now, the specter of concern is that, does that also mean, people, companies can do more with less people, and will that lead to layoffs? That is an overhanging cloud that, certainly some people are concerned about. But I would say in general, this is a pretty broad-based level of interest. And so that's why it's hard to kind of say, it's just going to be this company or that company, because there's going to be a couple that may not do as well. Particularly, there's a couple of tech stops on the hardware side that we know that Q4 was sort of the bottom for a number of companies. So those Q4 numbers may not be great. Obviously, it's going to be their outlook looking ahead. I think generally those are going to be pretty positive.
And so a lot of investors out there perhaps wondering if they've missed out on the big leg higher in AI from 2023, and if there is yet another leg from here, from this point. What would you need to hear from these companies to firmly signal that there is that next inflection point?
It's a great point, Brad. And I think a lot of people are going to be concerned with that, because how long can this go on, right? There's always that question. Look, obviously, it's going to boil down to what their expectations are for, and the pipelines. If we start hearing about really long pipelines for earnings and demand, that's why, Nvidia, they can't make enough chips, to satisfy the demand. They're a classic example.
Jensen Huang's making them in his kitchen, Bob, from what we saw. He posted that photo.
Yeah, exactly. The bottom line is, I think we'll start to see a few other companies besides Nvidia start to talk about some of that pipeline type of business. And again, it's going to be broad-based, because the thing about AI is, obviously, you've got the chips that drive it, you've got the software and services that enable it, and there's companies who also do the implementation services. And that's pretty broad-based. You've also got people like selling the traditional server hardware into companies. Companies are starting to do some of this AI work on their own. And then all the smaller companies that are kind of feeding into this, the open AIs that are helping, with Microsoft, the Anthropics that are helping with Amazon. All of these smaller companies that, of course, may see as purchase targets in the new year as well, because a lot of people are also talking about acquisitions for AI in 2024. But, I think specifically to your question, Brad, I think it's going to be all about what sort of pipelines are they seeing, and are they able to maintain those pipelines, and what sort of vision do they have? Are they willing to even go out more than a quarter and maybe start talking about what their expectations are for the full year?
So, Bob, given that and a number of the long list of questions that investors need to keep in mind this earnings season, who do you think then is best positioned at this point heading into these these results that we'll get over the next several weeks?
Well, look, it's going to vary a lot. You specifically brought up Netflix. Netflix is a different animal, right? It's a movie entertainment streaming service. It happens to be delivered via tech, but it's not really a tech company. But look, I think Netflix looks great, not necessarily on the AI side, although they use a little bit of AI to determine what things you might want to watch next, but they've been doing that for a while. But I think they're going to benefit from some of the password sharing stuff that they've done, the their advertising offering, especially in other countries outside the U.S. where they're really seeing a lot of growth. But in terms of actual tech, I mean, I'm going to be watching all the big tech chip guys. Intel is later this week. Again, it will be interesting to see what happens with Intel. IBM is later this week. IBM has been building up their AI business as well. Tesla obviously is going to be interesting to watch, but again, I think it's more on the pure automotive side. The AI things that they're doing. I mean, look, you've got Musk saying, "Oh, well, I won't do more AI stuff within Tesla unless you give me more money." I mean, that's going to cloud things around a bit for them on the AI side. So it's going to boil down to, hey, what kind of demand does there continue to be for EVs and the car segment in general and EVs in general? So again, I think it's broad based. I'm still excited, obviously, about Nvidia. I still think Microsoft has a big run. I'm going to be curious to see what Google's able to do as well, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
All right, Bob, I told you that next time we had you on, we'd just play some guitar and jam out a little bit. Too many earnings to jam on, though, to begin this week here. Bob, we appreciate you helping us break this down and ahead of the market session beginning here. Bob O'Donnell, TECHnalysis Research President and Chief Analyst.